This conference will now be recorded.
This is LIN02's 2019 facility plan with the State Construction Department, and we'll introduce ourselves first.
Hey guys, I'm Raj Nami. I'm the accounting analyst and the AIM assistant here. And my role in the facility plan is I basically provide these guys with a variety of information from the AIM database, whatever information they need.
Raj has been a great asset to our team this year in planning. We really value him and appreciate him.
Amber Leach, Policy Planning Coordinator now. And my role during this process is to work with the districts on all the documentation for today's facility plan.
So Amber, you guys probably realize maybe that Charlie Kaufman took a business manager's position in Wheatland, which we're really proud of him and happy for him. And so, yeah, this is Amber's first day in filling that position. I shouldn't say that because she's been a part of data analysis and part of the team as well. Well, it's not brand new to her, but it's a brand new position, and she gets paid just a little bit more. So she's happy about that, and we're happy we can bring her into a full-time state position. Troy Decker, planning supervisor. My responsibility here is make sure we abide by all state statutes, rules, and regs with regard to the requirements for facility planning. Make sure we capture accurate data so that we can report accurately to the select committee and to the commission, and make sure everybody has an open form of communication. That's about it.
My name is Travis Hoff. I am the Public Information Officer, and I guess my role for at least this meeting is trying to learn what all this department does and how I can help.
Very good. I'm Paul Severson. I am the Design and Construction Administrator, which is a long way of saying that I work for the project managers, not they work for me. Basically, I offer support, assistance, coordination, calibration, and a little bit of leadership in there too, so that we can provide as consistent delivery of service to all districts across the state.
I'm Lance Johnson, project manager. I work directly with the school districts.
Jake Yankee, business manager.
Matt Erickson, superintendent. And Warren Hicks, facilities director.
All right, well, thank you guys so much for joining us. I'm going to go ahead and turn off our camera now, and we'll just continue on. You've told me you can see my screen. So with that, I think we've got everybody represented here. We usually have our planning and finance administrator, Brandon, here, but he's got some other obligations, so he's not going to be able to make it today. So with that, we'll go ahead and move on with facility plan. So one of the things that we've really tried to do over the last several years is make these facility plan templates very visual. The reason is because we have had in the past requests from the governor's office and from individual legislators to get a copy of a facility plan for districts, individual districts. And so this is a great way for them to know what's happening in your school district from a facility point of view. Within 10 minutes, they can have a really good understanding of at least a higher level understanding of what's going on in your school district. So that's good. The other thing we found out over time is the simple fact that there's turnover in school districts. And so this is a really good tool. Sometimes in school districts, you know, the 3 positions you guys hold, those positions can turn over in 1 year. And it's brand new staff all the way across at times. So this is a great historic document. Helps those new people in districts kind of know what's been presented, talked about, and then helps them in preparation for the next facility plan, which they're new at. So that's great. And then, believe it or not, I don't know, it doesn't happen that often. I say that kiddingly. We get changeover in our office as well. So I think it's good that we have a process has continuity to it, and as we get changeover and new personnel in our office, we can continue on with excellence. So with that, You can see just some Google Earth visuals. They're just for illustrative purposes. Starting last year, we started using the GIS county websites to verify acreages. I think there's a lot more accurate. Amber has done just a fantastic job with you school districts in preparing for these meetings. Obviously, there's what, six of us from our organization, 3 of you, there's 9 on this call. And so as we went through the database and Amber did all that hard work with you guys, some of the stuff's formality. It's basically taking care of the database, making sure everything's updated. So we're going to kind of go through that at a fair pace here, and then we're going to get to the stuff that really needs to be talked about and that would be advantageous for all of us to discuss. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and move on. You'll have plenty of opportunity to talk. I'm going to type as we go, so that if anybody sees something you don't like in my notes, please mention it, and I'll be more than happy to change that and for us to make sure our communication is good. And then we've always in the past, we've kind of separated your notes from our notes also, that we don't have to compete with your notes. You can say what you want to say and we'll honor that. And then of course we respond to each of your concerns or observations or needs. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and move on. You have reviewed acreages and verify accuracy. Thank you for checking that. That's important because these acreages have to do with your WDE block grant and data sent from us from this database. This is an authoritative database, and it's sent over to WDE on a yearly basis. I think in April, Raj is working on that right now. And they use that data to pay you groundskeeper allowances. So thanks for doing that. Okay, we presented, that's right, land disposition has been presented. Thanks for doing that last meeting. So anyway, you took that and sold 1 acre. I think that was already past tense. You already had sold it. Is that correct, JC?
Correct.
So thanks for doing that. AIM database is updated with regard to the land parcels. Property profiles, this is in our database. We have a property profile for each and every building. The important thing about this is it impacts several things. WDE sends it over to us once a year after the school year is done. They've scrubbed the data, the ADM, and average daily membership, and we basically calculate major maintenance off of that, but that has to do with allowable square footage. And so the database keeps track of that, and that's why we verify that. For you guys in the block grant, the data we send over to them affects your operations, your maintenance payments. So thanks for confirming the accuracy of that. And then enhancements, we're required by state statute to send over to the select committee on an annual basis any enhancements. These are historical in nature and cumulative as they go. So thanks for verifying that. And then in district notes, you guys have shown basically an enhancement that you guys are working toward right now. It looks like a career technology center. And that's tied, is that going to be tied to your high school?
Correct.
Okay.
It'll be tied to Star Valley High.
Okay. Whose pickup is that? That's really nice. Hold on, that's not a real picture. That's a
3D.
Anyway.
How do you like the school colors in the bays? The top right diagram.
Oh yeah, awesome. Yeah, the first time this is probably BIM. Was this created in BIM? Is that what it is?
Well, there's a lot of other 3D programs that aren't BIM as well, so it could be BIM, but it may not be.
But I know that I saw one time an architect, because I used to do procurement of architects, and they were comparing the real photo of the inside foyer and the BIM or whatever it was, and that one looked a lot better than the real.
The real one.
Yeah, it's like I don't know how they do that, but it's like, which one's real? I think it's that one. So anyway, good. Well, guys, that's exciting. It looks like you're gonna also, the district is adding a new maintenance building to repurpose space within Swift Creek High School for CTE courses, need PDF. Okay, so I think we're good there. I just said, guys, and all that, I take it is you're moving toward that, and one for sure the summer. What the Swift Creek one? What's the timing on that one?
June 1st completion.
Okay. So I basically now, obviously, when you guys work with Amber, she prepares notes. I come in here, I prepare responses. They're not canned responses. They're just responses to what I read. However, I have to admit I'm somewhat repetitious from district to district. But anyway, once the completion of the district building and sell the property are complete, district will need to submit AIM data form. Okay, so.
And an enhancement acknowledgement form with the commission.
Yeah, update form, that's right, and enhancement, yep. So you guys, when you're done with those, just submit those to Lance. You guys, have you filled out the enhancement acknowledgement form before?
Yeah.
Okay, and I don't recall these coming for the commission yet, is that correct, JC?
Correct. I was going to do anything till they showed me the money, so now we're starting to do it.
Okay. So just send those, usually I think, Lance, you just get them first, look them through, and then you pass them all. Is that how you guys do that?
Myself and Shelley.
Okay.
Right. I look at it, I sign it, send it back to the district, and they send it on to Shelley with a narrative.
Okay. Okay, appropriation, you have one study for Afton Elementary School. Sorry I couldn't make it last week to that, guys, to your board meeting. I heard that was really good. But anyway, I would say you're really more in the middle of it. You're pretty well complete, aren't you, for the most part, or where are we at with that?
That's right. I very much appreciated Will being here. It was much better to have him respond to a stakeholder or a community member's questions than board members, to be honest. So we appreciated Will being here.
He's pretty knowledgeable. He's learned a lot, and then we've really enjoyed time with you guys. And I think you have some questions or probably maybe even some apprehensions with regard to the possibility of funding. I think I've been really honest with you on that. But at any rate, before we start talking about that, the project is in progress, needs to remain open. We'll revisit this. It's gonna take them a little while to finish up your final study. I know will be sending basically a presentation. And so I think down here, I did mention already for you guys, I think you need to send a letter to Shelley and myself, just, carbon copy me, but asking to be on. I assume you guys want to present at the May meeting. You have to if you're going to be in the budget.
Okay. So I got a voicemail this morning from you, Troy, that through Amanda Welch, correct?
Yeah. Yep, that's right. I called you last week. Yep.
So we'll make sure that we get that taken care of in the next day or two.
Wonderful. That'd be great. And that would be, we don't have one in April, but May, and we'll just simultaneously, we present the budget, we'll present your study.
Perfect.
Okay, with security then, let's go on with that. Lance.
Okay. Well, JC and Warren, you're aware of the process that we've gone through with the first $9 million funds for security, that now you realize that you can move money from one element to another because we've actually exercised that process, and we've done some security in the district, so we are moving forward with that. We're not stalled out with that, but also you're aware of the 10% security money that was allowed through. It's actually 10% of your major maintenance that you can be approved to be using for any of the 20 elements of the security as well, and we've exercised that. Now, I want to go back to the transferring of money from one element to another. JC, we've gone through this process. You're familiar with the letter and the request that you have to submit for that, telling us where you want the money to come from and go to, as well as understanding that the money is not going to be back funded. Now, this year, they have passed $4.9 million for additional security, and Paul, from what I understand now, it's just being discussed on how that's going to be deployed and for what purposes that could be used within the 20 elements as well. Is that correct?
That's correct. The statute basically gives the commission the ability to make a determination on what instruction should be associated with that and how it can be expended. And along with that, any remaining balance that you have of your $9 million, that will be under a consideration with the commission as well, that they may expand the ability to expend those funds as well beyond the original 8 priorities. So we will probably be hearing more about that in May from our commission. Prior to then, we'll just have to essentially wait and see just exactly what they determine they're going to do. We have done some internal analysis on the funds that each district has available, the funds that would be available if it was expanded to the 20 elements, and we've done analysis that will give the commission some information, but they make the final determination. And like I say, again, we expect that in May, unless they direct us to do more study for them.
Thanks, Paul. So back to the 10% major maintenance money you can use for security. As I mentioned, you were able to do that the last couple of years, and as well this year they also passed the ability to be expending up to the 10% of your major maintenance once again for that. And there had been talk about not knowing whether that's going to be available in the future. So every time that you submit for 10% security, I'll be checking your balance to make sure that we don't overexpend on that, because there may not be a way to replenish that if we overexpend. Security conferences, I believe, Warren, you've gone to those, have you not? To some of the SFD security conferences?
Yeah,
Warren, okay, yeah, I thought you did, and we've had a few of those over the last couple of years, and they're planning on having additional security conferences, and another one that maybe I can ask Paul to tie into as well, he's involved with kind of, is one in Laramie in the upcoming little while. So Paul, you want to talk about that one?
Yeah, currently we are looking, the WDE has their S5S conference typically sometime in the early fall, and they have asked if we would like to make a presentation on physical security issues. Tentatively, we've scheduled that for September 30th. It would be a half-day seminar session, and it would be at the Gateway Center at the University of Wyoming in Laramie. That's the preliminary plans, but we will, as soon as those are solided up, we will have our public information officer start putting information out there, putting it on our website so that people can be planning for that.
So, and with the security funding, there's also other available grants through Homeland Security and Department of Justice that you may be able to tap into as well if you look. So with that being said, do you have any security questions for me, you guys?
I don't at this point.
Okay, thank you.
So yeah, the only problem I have is that's during bow hunting for elk, so I think they need to change that. a little bit later.
From what I understand, they've heard that from a number of people. That's why I'm not saying that it's solid, because there's a lot of people who've got concern about that. And one thing that I will give you a bit of a heads up on, one of the things we intend on doing is focusing on districts that have done some unique and special things, and your district happens to be one of those districts that we may be giving an invitation to you to talk a little bit about what you've done in your facilities, because we've seen where you've kind of set up some special alert centers or basically to deal with an event in a building, and we may be asking you to be one of our experts this year.
Okay.
So to make sure you guys understood, in session law then, and this is the last time we'll see, we're not anticipating it being renewed, but because this is the second year of the biennium, you guys are going to get that about 170 more thousand on top of what you had, or have left 285. Well, I know that's a July or June 30th number, but anyway, so just know that you're going to get that much more. And it's not really money being generated for, it's just a category within major maintenance. So, and I think you guys understand that.
Okay.
We're going to be talking about the 4.9 million here in just a minute, additional funds. So capacity. Obviously, we've been doing a capacity study over there, or due to capacity, we've been doing a study. We've talked, I've shared clearly with you that the rules and regs were changed, not changed, I guess just reinforced, and are being enforced with regard to how we're going to prioritize projects this year. In the past, we've done capacity list by itself, and the top of that list was driving recommendations for funding. We had a condition list. The top of that list was driving recommendations. And then when capital funds came from either of those for appropriations, they also covered educational suitability simultaneously to take care of those issues and needs and upgrades in buildings. So down below, I explained this, but this is a good time to talk about it. Now it's every building will have 3 scores that will roll up into a final score or so. There's multiple ways to skin the cat. This still has to be, we are working with, we will be presenting this to the commission and getting their input and school district input with regard to how we're going to follow rules and regs. But anyway, so every building will have three basically scores. 50% of that score will be tied to the condition of that building, 35% capacity, and 15% educational suitability. And so that's kind of the new law of the land. But before that ever was contemplated, this study began, and it was kicked off because of capacity issues. And so to acknowledge, when we look at your capacity issues, the elementary school capacity, Afton and Osmond and stuff, we know that's really high. And that's, I just call it the South Star Valley, North Star Valley, but a little less when you go north toward Jackson. And then in the elementary.
Troy?
Yes, go ahead.
Second crazy question on that. Do you anticipate this formula being in place for 3 to 5 years, or is it totally out of you guys' hands? And just talk to us about that for a second.
No problem. Rules and regs, this is the first time they were actually, well, I think it's happened maybe couple times since 2002 when SFC started. And so rules and regs, I think that as we move forward and state statute changes, we're going to be, I think, dealing with rules and regs on a more frequent basis. And I don't know if you guys remember, I can't remember, we were in Cody. Do you remember, was that last December maybe? Or November?
November.
is when the last time they were reviewed, and so we presented those. I don't know if you guys remember that, but I'm sure you were made aware of it. Whether you attended or not, I can't remember. But yeah, rules and regs, sometimes it's driven by state statutes. It's changed, so we need to update them. Sometimes there's just an interest and by the department to do so. But I think it's going to be more frequent now. I think with the new rules and regs that have been adopted, and you have to go through, I can't remember, you got to go through X number of meetings over X number of months to get public input, to make it a very public process by which anybody can have input on and comments on the rules and regs.
Right, and I know when George was going through that process, I know he identified the number of steps, but it's somewhere like 28 different steps that have to go through. So it's not something that happens quickly. It's not something that happens without people being aware of what's going on, because there's continually been identification of the process going on. We have learned subsequently that a lot of people haven't paid attention to those notifications, but we do know that the notifications were sent out as required by state statute.
So enrollment projections, we've got a bunch of those up, guys. I know we've looked at Lower and Upper Valley, different and Lower and Upper Valley combined, Cokeville by itself, stuff like that. You guys are very aware of these projections, and we can go into the actual spreadsheets themselves. But I think we're all convinced that you guys are growing, will continue to grow. And in the planning study that we've spent lots of months on, we actually go into the future. We use 10 years of trailing data. And maybe I'm just going to grab one here, guys, if you don't mind. I'm going to grab one and just for Travis's sake, maybe walk through it real quick. Just for the fun of it here, because it's kind of interesting. Basically, we take 10 years of trailing data. These are all numbers reported by WDE. We go back 10 years and we actually take that actual enrollment and then we project out into the future 10 years. The only time we use these projections in any way, shape, or form is when we're looking at a capital remedy. And then we actually use the enrollment. Otherwise, they're informative, they're fine, but they're based on mathematical computations. So they're following a trend line of what the actual enrollment is, and then project out based on that trend what potential could be if the same trend were to continue, what the enrollment could be 2, 3, 4, 10 years out in the future. And then what we do then is each year for the transition from one grade to another, this is kindergarten. Over here you can see kindergarten through 12, and this is all in their district here. And what we do then is we just take like 2008 kindergarten, they advance 2009 first grade, 2009 kindergarten, 2010 first grade, and we take 10 years and we average those 10 years and we call it a survival rate. And so their survival rate, the number of students that have continued on from kindergarten to first grade in their district, or with LIN02, and we didn't include Afton, Osmond, Cokeville, or Swift Creek for reasons here, but they have a 99%, so they just lose 1/100% or I'm sorry, 1% of their students in that transition over 10 years, and so on. And you can follow that down through. This community has traditionally been an agricultural community, and so now this number is really different. Oh yeah, I know why. You can see here when you go from what are we talking, 6th to 7th grade? Is that right, guys? Or is it, yeah, 6th to 7th grade? But yeah, what happens is they have an upper and lower valley that's separated by a geographical, basically, hill. What do you guys call that little hill there? The Narrows. And so, go ahead.
No, it's called the Narrows. The valley gets really narrow geographically, and that's what separates the lower from the Upper Valley.
Okay.
At that point, then, they have these elementary schools and do two different, well, more than that. We've got Cokeville down there as well, was a total separate K-12 community. So what happens is the students from the, I always get confused, it's the Upper Valley, correct, guys? Come to the Lower Valley?
Opposite.
Okay.
The Lower Valley comes to the Upper Valley, which is Afton.
Yeah, and then all these sixth graders then transition into seventh, and they all go to one high school, junior high school, one junior high, and then to a high school. So that's why this 200% increase.
Gotcha.
At seventh grade is actually all of them going into a single school.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. So anyway, guys, you have, I would say you have probably one of the highest survival rates, as in the number of students that transition from one school to another in the entire state. So you guys have a real stable community. I don't know if that's going to change as your demographics change, because your demographics through the study, obviously, things are changing. Agriculture is no longer the predominant economic force within the valley. Any thoughts on that?
No.
Okay. I did that for Travis's sake, guys. Thanks. I know you know this stuff very well. So you guys are still number one, Afton Osmond. So I guess what I can tell you right now is that we're following commission policy and going into that percentage breakdown for what a list looks like. And that's going to go to the commission. Now, what happens after that, or what happens as it advances to the select committee, is it's just up in the air. I mean, we're going to follow commission policy, rules and regs. The commission is going to make recommendations based on that, and then it's going to get to the select committee, and the select committee is going to make decisions what's going to happen. And I think it's going to be really important for you guys to attend those meetings as we move forward from May on through the commission and have voice in that as well. You guys are number one on this list. You're continuing to grow, but you have excellent, we're going to see that in a minute, you have excellent condition buildings. And so the reality is, and I don't know 100% sure, but the reality is that you may not end up at the top of that list and have a budget recommendation because of the fact that now all these three criteria are being blended together in weighting to score a building in one final composite score. But there's some acknowledgments. Number one is we have an educational suitability assessment that is dated back to 2010. So it's now, give or take, 9 years old. And so that data is pretty dated. And a lot of things have happened in buildings since then, in educational facilities. That I think one concern, obviously, and you have it, I'm sure, and you can speak for yourself, but is the fact that no seats are I think any school district that is over capacity and doesn't I mean, it has seats, but it's exceeding the restricted capacity per room that is the commission policy or methodology. That seems to be a kind of a concern if that is somewhat masked by a broader perspective of what a building is as a whole, instead of dealing with capacity by itself, which would qualify for additions or other remedies that may help the district deal with those tighter or the more students within each individual classroom. So I don't know how you guys feel about that, but I think that as we move forward from this point forward, I think it'd be really good from your study, presenting your study and forward, to be vocal about how you feel about things. You guys are great people to work with. We enjoy that. We initiated, you initiated, the commission initiated a study based on capacity, and what the future looks like is yet to be determined as the select committee receives that information and then decides where it wants to go from there with regard to recommendations that progressed to the Joint Appropriations Committee. Any thoughts or comments on that?
No, because if you look at the other list that's attached to this document, it shows all those other schools. We're not even on that list. So this list doesn't even placate to the other list at all.
Hey, Troy, question. When is the next conditions assessment?
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in just a minute if we can hold off for just a moment. Would that be okay?
Yeah.
And we'll look at that schedule. Okay, guys, I can tell you, you guys are just great to work with. We really appreciate you, and we're really excited about your study, and we look forward to presenting that here in May. You guys presenting that. That's pretty well what I've said here, and I left a message for you and talked to you about it. So I think we all know where we need to be and where we're going to go.
Thank you.
Where's the May meeting at?
Buffalo, beautiful town of Buffalo.
Okay.
Okay, you know, guys, I can't even think about a commission meeting anymore without thinking of the absolute best meal I've ever had in any school district in my entire life was at a commission meeting in your hometown.
Little flank steak?
Oh my. That's the best meat I've ever tasted. Yeah, and those guys, you guys go home every night and eat that, don't you?
Every night, yep.
Hey, Troy, if you want to change the location of that May meeting to Afton,
That'd be great.
we'll double down.
Hey, we better get that done here. I'm sure no one would complain if we had it twice in one place and in back to back. Anyway, sure appreciate your hospitality of that, and it was good. And I know our commission really appreciated getting the tours and seeing Afton Elementary School and Osmond both in person. I think really was very valuable for you guys and the commission. So, and I think that's going to carry forward. I think as you present your study, I think that's going to be valuable for them having a really good understanding of where you guys have been and where you want to go.
The park will be open in May, will it? So we have to go around. It will.
So charter school, you guys don't have one, so we don't have to cover that. Building condition, you guys are very familiar with this, but as building, we call them FCI scores, facility condition index scores. As a building ages, it just goes through just like your vehicle through maintenance and preventive maintenance, and pretty soon you got to spend a little more major maintenance on that building, and eventually you have to have an infusion of capital funds in a more major way to remedy those needs, and that's all just condition. We're talking about condition here. This is how the FCI, the Facility Condition Index, actually number for a building is generated or calculated. I just put that in this year so that people understand that because it's important. Review buildings then, we've got about 450, give or take, educational buildings in the state. And this is just page one of those 450 buildings, and the higher score represents a higher deferred maintenance value correlating to that to the condition of that building. So a lot of these are being taken care of, have been taken care of, or are being taken care of in this budget. And you guys are not on that because you have excellent buildings. We also have a separate list for ancillary buildings or support buildings, however you want to call them. And here's I can't remember how many of those are, about 100 plus. And you guys don't have anything on that one as well because your buildings are again good condition. The important thing to understand between the educational building list and the ancillary building list, and we'll still continue to produce these for at least a while, I'm sure, because these numbers are put into that composite score now for the final building score of any building, individual building. But state law requires that the commission make recommendations for educational buildings as a priority over support buildings. because of the cutback in the number of hundreds of millions, billions of dollars poured into educational buildings in the last couple decades here, give or take, now that we don't have that kind of revenue stream coming and budget recommendations in the sometimes $500 million in a biennium, it's going to be, we don't anticipate a lot of funds coming for capital monies for support buildings, because they're required, the commission is required to prioritize educational buildings first and foremost. So basically what we're telling districts is make sure you take care of your support buildings with major maintenance, because it's going to take a lot to get something passed in front of an educational building in the near future at least. So you guys, here's your buildings. Your worst scoring is a 0.22. Your best, this is just an ag lab here, but you guys have just excellent, your buildings are in just excellent shape, and we know that because we've seen them. So I just said, I didn't say excellent, even though it's true, but I just said good. I think I just deleted that, so I probably should go back. So that's about all I said on that. Any other thoughts on condition before we move on to major maintenance?
I don't think we have any.
Okay. Major maintenance, you guys updated your status codes in the AIM database for your work orders. Little house cleaning, thank you. And with that, any recommendations you have or submittal of planned work orders, do go through Lance. He takes a look at each of them, and all that qualify for major maintenance he approves. If he doesn't agree with one, he sends back, gets more information, or says it doesn't qualify based on application, the consistent application of state statute, what that definition of major maintenance is. So appreciate you guys working through Lance. He's a great guy, and we appreciate you guys using him. Your balances, we talked about your 10% securities, and just a reminder, you guys know this, but it doesn't, those do not have to qualify for actual major maintenance definition itself. They can be used, have a looser definition to apply those to. 10% enhancement numbers or monies you have to qualify for the definition of major maintenance, but these can be used on things that aren't covered under the adequacy standards, such as not tracks, but like lighting for sports fields. I don't know, do you guys have any teacherages or anything like in Cokeville?
No, we tore it down.
Okay, but those used to be a great asset for using on teacherages and stuff like that. Lance, I'm sure you have probably other examples of 10% monies but these guys pretty well know it well. But give me a couple more, because I always just say two, and I never know what else to say for 10% monies.
Crow's nest.
You know what, guys? Lance had to take off at 15 till, so I probably should have asked that question before. Can you think of any others, Paul, for 10% that would be?
We did a crow's nest with our 10% core.
Yeah, crow's nest, lighting on football fields.
So probably like a football sign would work.
Yeah, swimming pools.
Like a scoreboard. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Oh yeah, swimming pools. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So for illustrative purposes, and it's a little hard to read these, but what we do is we just go back last year's 680, and we just take out what your priorities were last year. And this is, again, if someone asks for your facility plan and wants to look at it, this is just illustrative of last year's priorities, from greatest expenditure, central plant heating, to lowest expenditures, $630 for key exterior areas for security. And then that breakdown is also per building here on where you spent money at with regard to last year's priorities for major maintenance expenditures. So we'll kind of go through that. Low condition scores. Obviously, state statute says that school districts are to spend money on their lowest, to prioritize your lowest scoring systems. I think you guys, this is just a testimony of the fact that you don't have a lot of low scoring systems. Some districts have pages worth, which means you have really good facilities. And I know you guys, every year we have individual legislators and committee meetings ask, are these people spending money on their highest needs, lowest scores? And so instead of us speaking for you, we just allow you to speak for yourselves. We can see that you've got a lot of things completed. You got some other things planned. I think you guys have demonstrated a very good use of money, state monies, and you guys know how to prioritize your facility needs as you move forward. So we appreciate that. And if anybody ever asks for your facility plan, you've just spoken for yourself, and this is what we give them. Any other comments on that?
Nope.
Here's how those score ratings are made, and it's based on the percent of deficiencies within each system. For instance, if the roof had 10 to 25% deficiency, from an assessment, it would be rated as a 3, and that generates these numbers and deferred maintenance values that are illustrative of the needs in buildings. So now here we go. So yes, we are going to go out, and this fall we're going to put together the scope for the next condition assessment. Last one that was done was 2016. Every 4 years, state law requires an on-site assessment of every school building in the state. And so that's what we do. We don't do little tiny sheds, but we do everything else. So we'll put that scope together, go out, procure a professional service provider to do the assessment. And then the thing that, and I think, Warren, you've been at these, I'm pretty sure you have. Have you been at the training sessions we offer every 4 years to train people on the assessment tool?
I was not at the last one.
I was.
Oh, thank you, JC. Good. So whether it's JC or Warren or whoever, we really do want school districts to come and do that, because it's a 4-year or 4-year. We have April 1st here, but it's sometime in April. We'll get out to you when that is in 2020. But we spend 4 hours in Casper, and we train districts on what the assessment tool is, how it's used, its importance, the data we gather in order to help the assessment team do a great job. And then the importance of you guys to be educated in the tool, because then you will know exactly what they're looking for as you take them around. We ask that every district provide their absolute, their best person who knows the facilities best to shadow the assessor the whole time they're there. We don't want keys given to assessors and then at the end of the day they hand them in. We want these assessments to be as accurate as possible in order to be a tool for you and the legislature when we report to them. So that'll be offered, and we look forward to one of you guys being there. And then the other thing I want to mention here, and then we'll be done by next year, by December. That'll be uploaded, and we'll have all your buildings updated for everything that you've done into them, either capital, major maintenance, or enhancement, other funds that have gone to the improvement of those buildings, or the degradation thereof because just the aging of the systems. The other thing is that sometimes districts get a little bit testy about the fact that we come in or have the condition assessment teams come in and do it during school year. But with over like 550 buildings, it's virtually impossible for us to get that done in a smart economic way in 2.5 months of the summer. So we will kind of start basically in the spring, as assessments will start in about May, about that last week of school, go through the summer, and then go a couple months or so, actually, about a month and a half into the fall as well, just because it's unrealistic to expect all those buildings, and we can't afford that at $5 million instead of $2.5 million to get them done. Any questions on that?
No, I think we're good with that. Thank you, Troy.
Go ahead.
One other thing I'd like to add, because Troy was saying that we basically do all buildings except for sheds, and the clarification is that we don't do enhancements. In the past, there have been enhancements that have been done, but moving forward, we won't be doing enhancement reviews anymore.
So if it's a freestanding building.
Right.
Yep. If your enhancement is part of a whole system, we'll include that as part of the assessment.
Well, sometimes. Sometimes swimming pools are attached onto the buildings and they don't go into the swimming pools.
Thank you, Paul, for clarification. Component, you guys know we have component, I assume that we have a component projects list. Component projects are basically defined as capital funds that are made available through the legislature to cover insufficient major maintenance funds. And so we always ask districts if they have systems that are going to be, if you have a $2 million roof coming up and you only make, you know, 500,000 a year, it's kind of unrealistic to think that you're going to be able to save for 4 years, spend no money whatsoever on anything else, and then replace a roof and be dead broke. So component projects they're a great opportunity for school districts if they have larger major maintenance projects to apply for those. And so at any rate, there were last year, or for this year, 31 submissions for a total of $39 million. On average, we get about $6 million a year. So to be honest with you, the likelihood of going past about number 4 here is not that great. But still, that's $6 million worth of $6.6 million of major maintenance that was taken care of in at least 4 districts. We'll see what the commission wants to do with this list, but this is pending commission consideration in May. Any questions on that?
Nope.
All righty. There's next opportunity if you want to take advantage of submitting that. That's in there. I just said, guys, that you're continuing to maintain your buildings with available major maintenance funds. All right. Paul, you want to take this one? Have you memorized this one good enough yet?
No, I have not.
Okay.
I'm not even going to attempt it anymore because you're the one who updated it last. You probably know better than I do.
Oh my. Obviously, you guys go through, I know you guys track very well on the educational side bills that are making their way through the legislative process. And I think isn't the WASBO side or WASA or something, JC, that you guys have, and maybe you have other avenues by which to track bills, but I think you've got someone helping you guys track those. Is that correct? You guys still there?
Yeah, we're here.
Okay. Did you hear my question?
No, it just cut out here. We're still having audio issues.
Uh-oh. Okay. Well, you didn't miss anything. I was going to ask, on the education side, I think WASBO or WASA or something, you guys have a website that you've got someone helping you guys track bills as they work through the legislative process. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And anyway, we've kind of paid attention to that last year and this year. And some of the things we're going to talk about here, you guys, they are covered through that website as you track through. Other things are not. So these are the things that actually survived the legislative process, the bills, and that were signed into or considered to be, they're at least enrolled. I'm thinking a couple of these may still be kind of, could be not completely, they could be line item vetoed or something by the governor still. I don't know if all of them have been signed into law as of yet. But I know all of these at least have been enrolled. So there is a public, so here they go, House Bill 52. And so all we're sharing is with some facility related bills. House Bill 52, Public Works and Contracts. Architect in that one is to write specifications for products that are available from Wyoming resident suppliers. The theme there is that the Wyoming legislature wants to keep Wyoming money in Wyoming. for it not to be going out of state as frequently as it has. So I think that that's an attempt to do that. Any questions on that? So I think, guys, on that one is if you start working with architects outside of, with your own monies, whether whatever, just be aware of the fact that that would be something that they would be required to have in their specifications, and you'll want to remind them of that. House Bill 65, procurement amendments. There were a lot of changes in this, but the bottom line is we had some state, first of all, we had for procurement, municipalities had different state statutes regarding procurement of professional service providers, than counties, than state agencies, than school districts, and universities, and the law was all over the place. And so what happened was there were a bunch of stakeholders brought together across the state. And Paul, were you a part of that?
I was not. Brandon was.
And really had some good input. And from that came the updating of state statute because those numbers, some of those dollar values were so low, they were like based on 30 or 40 years ago. And one of those was the $7,500, right, guys?
For bonding.
Yeah. So anyway, bonding goes up to 50,000, I believe, and there's different. I should say that there's different. Like I thought there was different levels of categories of progressive. Have you guys looked at this? Have you seen this at all? The House Bill 65.
I have.
Okay. So you doing that on a regular basis, JC, you could probably explain this a lot better than me, but we're trying to harmonize all the statutes so that different entities don't have to abide by different laws, and up the numbers so that you guys don't have to go through unnecessary restrictions to get work done at such a low dollar value. Raise those dollar values up to a point where it makes sense to go out and get competitive bids. I think part of the desire is to try to keep business local again, instead of forcing you to go outside of your local community to get things done with regard to service providers, procurement, and then standard advertising up to a minimum of 2 weeks. So with that, JC, you've looked at it. Any other observations?
No.
Okay, I'm sure you're happy about that one.
Yeah.
House Bill 78, education major maintenance funding, major maintenance payments. I'm sure you're aware of this one. I'm sure it would probably be covered under your educational tracking, but you guys are going to go not this September, but the following September. You're going to go a year. I guess it's starting July there or so. You guys are going to get quarterly payments instead of one lump sum, or I guess in the last year and this year it's going to be a July payment, 75% of your major maintenance, September 25%. Now it will be 25% for 4 quarters distributed throughout the year in those payments. House Bill 79, school finance interfund loans, is basically just a way for the legislature to move money from one pot to another, one account to another, to keep money flowing within the educational realm. Wyoming Underground Facilities Notification Act, I think that was a $500 fine if you hacked some electrical line or communications. Now it's up to
5,000.
5,000.
And they hold the architect responsible.
There you go. The architect's responsible for that, and they have to put that in their plans, and engineers as well. So be aware of that. If you're having any kind of site work done or something like that, civil work, make sure those architects and engineers are doing their job when they're working on your behalf. County zoning authority, that has to do, that may have been, that's questionable whether the governor was going to prove that or not, but that's just basically a private school in Jackson asking, they had, Jackson doesn't have all the land in the world, they have on a limited site, and the county said, hey, you're under the same zoning requirements as any other private business. And so they're like, well, in that case, we can't even build a school to hold the existing students we have. We've got a larger site, but we can't do what we need to house those students. So they got their legislators, someone got their legislators involved, got this through, and is trying to get private schools now to fall under the same guidelines as public schools with regard to zoning requirements for schools. Public records, this is affects Senate File 57, affects you and us both. And that's a simple fact that there's a higher requirement. At one time they had it up to a felony or some crazy thing like that.
Felony and large dollars, and I think it's still, there's a significant fine, but it doesn't sound like they're sending people to jail over it anymore.
Okay. So I was thinking if I needed vacation, I probably wouldn't reply to a public records a request, but they'd probably send me to jail. But anyway, it's not that. I'm sure you guys were probably following that on your side, weren't you?
Yeah, we get them all the time. We're trying to figure out which ones we want to kick against or not.
Yeah. Well, and then the definition. One thing we talked about today in our meeting was, what's the definition of public records? I mean, I don't know. I mean, for us, it's a little bit hard to tell because, I mean, you guys could ask for information from me today via email. Is that a public record, or is that when does it become? I mean, it's easy when someone who's not associated, just out in the community, a parent or something asks for something, or an attorney, or who knows what. And so what qualifies for that? I don't know if you guys have a good definition of that either. Maybe your end isn't quite as complex as ours.
No, we just always give them our payables.
There you go. Anyway, that's you might want to look at that a little more closely. Senate File 74, professional service procurement. This kind of follows previously. Architects, engineer firms have a physical office. Resident firms must have a physical office in Wyoming, and 50% of contracts shall be done with staff and contractors employed in Wyoming. So I know that there's a part of that statute also that talks about, there are probably exceptions to that where if a service just isn't provided in Wyoming, then there could be an exception to that, and obviously you can't abide by whatever it is. And I don't even know if we have any local kitchen consultants in Wyoming.
But before you can go do that, you will have to go get an official waiver before you can go search for somebody who would not be in Wyoming.
I see. So that'll make it a little more difficult to use services outside of Wyoming. General government appropriations, this is our actual appropriation for capital funding, which is our next topic here.
Yeah, so, one other that I'm just going to add a little comment to. The House Bill 52, which is the public works and contracts where you have to procure from Wyoming vendors. We've been asked a couple of times, how do we do that? And the answer is, we'd love to know how you guys plan on doing that so we can tell others. We don't know how you're going to do that.
There was a House bill, I can't remember, was it 82 or something, where we had asked to move major maintenance, what do you call the 2 to 2.5?
The cost replacement value.
Oh, that's right. A percentage of the cost you're right. CRV.
Right.
And we asked, not we. It was a recommendation to move that from a 2% to a 2.5% of CRV for major maintenance to calculate it, and that was shut down. So I don't know if school districts weren't aware of the impact on major maintenance. It would increase that really well for them, but apparently there wasn't enough support to get that through for it to survive the legislative process. So
actually, there was no support.
No support?
Nope, nobody came and spoke publicly.
Okay. So that one died. So attempt was not good enough. So with this then, let's go on to what did happen this year that flowed through, because these were approved. There was a satellite high school in Rock Springs for $17 million, almost $18 million appropriated money. The John C. Schiffer Alternative School in Sheridan was approved for about $8.8 million. That's going to be at the college campus up there. Shawnee, there were some 3 modulars in Converse 1. They asked for reappropriation, had some extra monies after replacing those modulars, and they were asked for reappropriation of those monies to deal with a 4th modular, rural modular. So it didn't cost the state any more money necessarily. It was just a reappropriation of existing that happened. Montessori Charter School, the state's responsible for covering leases for charter schools, so that was approved. Anticipated money to on these first 2 up here. Anticipated money is if there's any unanticipated costs that they can ask up to $1 million combined total to cover any unanticipated costs that would exceed the appropriation. Security projects, I think Lance talked about that. 4.95 million has been approved. That is yet, that'll probably follow a similar formula with regard to major maintenance based on ADM or something, but they're working on that. And you guys will get more security money, capital monies coming forward.
Actually, so far it's been discussed it will be tied back to the 2015 assessment, and shares will be determined based on each district's deficiencies that were identified in 2015, and your share will be based on how you compared to other districts in that deficiency rating. So that's currently the discussion, how to do it, not ADM.
Okay, scratch my comment. Major maintenance, another $1 million then. That was based on the increase in the
cost, means cost data.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. So you guys, that'll be distributed among the 48 school districts, and then there's another charter school lease for $412,000. So that was this year's budget for 33, almost 34 million.
Hey, that state high school capacity, what was their capacity, just out of curiosity?
Satellite high school?
Satellite, sorry.
Yeah, I can't remember. It drove about 115 seats when calculated during the study. So they were about 100, I think around 115 short, and then you had to do the enrollment projection.
Right.
So I think that increased that a little bit more to, I can't remember now, 170 or something students. So is that what you're asking, JC?
Yeah, I'm just curious how they got a $17.9 million price tag when you're adding on a wing or a couple of classrooms.
Oh, right. They don't have, yeah, the site at Rock Springs High School is completely restricted, limited site. They don't have enough parking. And then by the city code, they have to, if they touch that, they would have to add X number of parking. There is no more parking to add. There's no more space. So what happened then is what they did is they had a piece of BLM land that they have 2 other elementary schools on, and they're able to put a school on. So what they presented was, let's go ahead and they have, I can't remember what they call them, the programs. Like there's a fire science program.
Academy programs.
What? Academies. I'm sorry, they have academies at their high school. So what they did was to meet that capacity need, they have a master plan for a second high school in Rock Springs decades down the road. So what they did is they took a segmented approach to that master plan to a new high school. And I don't know if you recall this, but actually last biennium ago, not this one, but the one before, it was, I think, like 40+ million were requested for an entire new high school, an additional high school in Rock Springs. The legislature did not follow through with that. And so they cut down, I mean, you can imagine, you know, you have like a need for 170 students, you're going to build a campus for 1,000. That's a dream. So they came back and they asked for a segmented approach to the master plan to a new high school. and to put those academies in. I think they had 2 academies, a health academy or something like that. Fire, food, something to do with food.
Yeah, there was a food one, a fire one, and
culinary arts. Was there also one like a nursing or anyway? They were able to ask for monies for a portion of that building as a master plan, and then add on to it as the student numbers increase in the future. They can ask for another segment of that, and it's a smaller kind of bite-size approach to appropriation legislation.
Sorry about the sidewinding. We have 5 minutes and we get kicked out of this room where we started. Can we jump ahead if we need to on the thing? Sorry.
we got more than 5 minutes left.
Thank you. I can make it 5 seconds.
All right, let's do it. Because we're not asking for anything. We meet all the rules. We've done all our budget.
Got it. You are asking for something, though. You're asking for funding to address your capacity concerns for Osmond Afton, correct?
Correct.
Good. I got it. Okay, we got Swift Creek. We've already talked about some of those. There you go. We're done.
Okay.
Guys, appreciate you.
All right, guys.
No problem. Anything else before we quit?
No, I think it's pretty easy this year to do this document, and we know how it's. Well, let me rephrase that. We sure hope we know how it shakes out when it comes to funding for those schools, but we also understand what the process is. So.
Sounds good. Hey guys, your voice is important at all these meetings, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. We look forward to seeing you at the ones to come. So with that, we're going to go ahead and stop the recording. Thanks for your time today.
Awesome. Thank you, Troy.
Take care.
Yeah.